How did the number of homes on the market here in Hawaii compare to the number of homes on the market nationally? I got my hands on some cool data that we'll take a look at coming up next. Hey, what's going on, friends? Like I said in the intro, I have some new data that I got my hands on that compares Hawaii inventory levels to national levels and lets us see what the trends are and are they different or are they the same. And so basically the way that these graphs are laid out is these are the number of residential properties on the market. So these are homes and condos here on Hawaii Island. And I'm going to go through every single island in the state if you're wondering about the market in another island, because they are different. And so you have the number of homes here and then you on the state, and then you have the number of homes here on the right side that are the national numbers. And so the state numbers are in the bars, and then the line graph is the national numbers. So what this shows us is if we go back to December, January, February, we had a little bump in the number of properties, homes that were on the market here on the Big Island. And that number has fallen down to a low point in May and has crept up a little bit, but has been pretty stable in that kind of sub 700 unit range in the last few months, where if you look at the national trend, it was low when we were high, and then now it's creeping back up. And although our levels of inventory have kind of stayed the same or fallen a little bit, the national inventory is going up. So when you see a national story talking about increased inventory, it doesn't necessarily reflect what's going on here in the local market. And so we're going to run through this on every single island. So this is the Big Island, Hawaii Island. This next slide is for Maui. So if you look at Maui's numbers, same kind of trend. When Maui was high in the post kind of the end of the winter, right? January, February, March, they had a little peak in the number of homes on the market. The national numbers were lowest, and then now the national numbers are starting to trend up. And then obviously in August, it's the last piece of data that we have, there was a drop in the number of homes on the market because we lost a big segment of the market in Lahaina. And we knew what happened in Maui, and so things have slowed down overall in the market there. But as national inventory continues to rise, the Maui market is lower than it really has been since September or October of last year, where there was 429. There's only 447 residential properties in the market today. And then we jump to Honolulu. Honolulu's very different, right? I mean, the trends are different per island, and Honolulu is almost more stable. You had a big jump like we did in all the islands in the number of homes on the market back in February and March. But since then, it's been pretty stable month over month, not a huge variation. And as you see that national trend line continuing to go up, the national inventory is going up, but the number of homes on Oahu is almost totally stable at around 1,800 properties on the market. And then we go to Kauai, and Kauai is actually different again and somewhat similar to what's going on nationally. So inventory was rising as national inventory was rising, peaked back in January like the other islands, fell a little bit, and then started to go back up and is a little bit higher. But again, we're talking about very small variations, right? I mean, these aren't macro trends. I mean, we're talking, 219 versus 207, 210 back in January. So although the trend looks similar, it's a much smaller sample because the market is so small there versus the national market, which is very large. And just to put this all in context, right, like we've been talking about month over month over month, is that in the past, these numbers we're at like 50% normal inventory levels. And even nationally, where we're still kind of at around 700,000 listings nationally, that number is normally 1 million pre-COVID, pre those unicorn years in COVID. And so it's still overall, although things are kind of going up and down, still very, very low. And if you look at the annual inventory, this is months of supply of existing homes. This goes all the way back to 1999. But if you look at months of supply, I'll explain real quickly, is if every property stops selling today, based on the current levels of demand, how many months would it take for us to run out of homes to sell? And that's a judge for a test of the market to see how strong the market is. And in general, 6 months of supply means that's a balanced market. Anything less than 6 months means it's a seller's market. Anything more than 6 months is a buyer's market. And so technically we are still in a pretty strong seller's market nationally at 3.3 months of supply. If you look at back in 2008, the run up to 2008, this was one of those economic factors that was very different. Was we overbuilt, we oversupplied the market with homes, and there was a huge surplus in the number of homes on the market, and that is what led to one of the factors of many that led to the crash back then. And that's one of the main factors that's very different today than it was back then when people are trying to compare those markets. This is a fundamental factor that's very, very different. So if you look, pretty stable in terms of months of inventory, fell to, even if you go back to 2020, we are almost exactly the same level of homes on the market or months of inventory on the market as we were back then. And we're not seeing a huge jump up in that metric, which tells us that we are still in a constrained inventory market and will continue to keep the market strong and prices stable. So just an interesting set of data set right there. If you have any questions about your specific area, you want to dive a little deeper, you can always email me at dylan@buyabigisland.com or book a meeting at the link below. Always appreciate if you will like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next week. Aloha.